Young people will be the decider in this election. 60% of those registered to vote are under 40, so the young people have a major stake in the election. But we have to ask if young people do actually have a stake in the nation. Let's look at a couple of numbers. 70% of our population is made up of kids and people aged below 40. That's a lot. But how many of these young people have a say in the way the country is run? Not a lot. Again, some numbers. According to the government, we have 30,000 young people graduating every single year. Just a few of these people get jobs. The damage is deeper than we realize. Think about it. This is a generation that doesn't feel it belongs here. They love their country, but their country just doesn't love them back. It's easy to complain about the state of leadership in the country. We're talking about leadership in politics, business, and society, everywhere. But leaders are built, and it starts with how we empower our young people. Apart from the 12 million that's been set aside for a youth bank, it's hard to see any real youth empowerment program anywhere. Our young people need a chance to get involved. To make this happen, it's going to take a whole lot more than just slogans and rallies. Here are some low-hanging fruits, a few suggestions of what needs to happen. First, we need our youths to know really early just how government and business actually work. How? By getting them into government. Okay, before you powerful people get alarmed, no, we're not about to overthrow anyone. We're talking about internships in government itself. How about getting some of our brightest graduates applying to be interns for our ministers for set periods? Maybe 6 weeks, 6 months? This is a great way to get young people involved in nation building. What about Parliament? We've seen a lot of MPs in those portfolio committees. Some of them clearly go in there unprepared. They have very little info. We know our MPs have very little time for in-depth research. Why not get young graduates to intern and do research for committees? That way, we get better informed MPs, and at the same time, we're getting the young best minds occupied with government work. We need to talk about training. Where are our national apprenticeship programs? And is ZimDev doing the work that it's supposed to be doing? Last we heard, it was being used to buy bicycles in Cholocho. Its real job is developing skills. Every company in Zim pays 1% of its wage bill to ZimDev to raise money to train people. That's some 40 million per year. How about establishing a youth directory to provide a one-stop shop for information on organizations, vacancies, and youth groups? This will lead to effective collaboration and exchange of information. The Constitution demands youth participation. We have a youth policy that demands a 25% quota of all empowerment programs. The question is, how do we ensure that this is administered? The problem is the term empowerment has been turned into a dirty word. We get wides like that. A lot of youth empowerment projects went wrong.
5 years ago, CABS put in place a $10 million facility for young people. Before even half of that facility was disbursed, it was suspended ostensibly because young people had failed to pay back that facility.
In 2014, there was a 10 million youth development fund. It was meant to support businesses owned by young people, but the default rate was 92%. Basically, nobody paid back the money. So yes, we know the word empowerment scares a lot of people, but instead of replacing it with something better, it looks like we've forgotten about it altogether. There have been promises for youth residential stands, but we just don't want gifts alone. We want involvement. We want to feel like we're a part of something. You see, what's frustrating is that this generation is bursting, filled with ideas. We know we have the talents to help our country, but our country just isn't giving us that chance. Well, it's time that changed. Talking about change, Zim's global re-engagement plan bagged a good win this week. If you watched our Battle for Britain episode just last week, we told you about the Commonwealth Development Corporation, or the CDC Group. That's the UK's development finance arm. We said this group would be key in the diplomatic battle between the MDC and ZANU-PF. Well, this week, the CDC Group announced it was giving 100 million to private companies in Zimbabwe. This is the first time in over 20 years that Zim companies have received this kind of funding from the UK. Coca-Cola also announced that it would invest 65 million over the next 3 years. This should be good news for everyone, right? Well, tonight BT doesn't think so. He said foreign governments should wait until after elections. He said giving Zim companies this kind of money right now is like putting lipstick on the crocodile. Many opposition commentators actually agreed with BT. Even though the money is going to private firms, they see it as a government bailout. Or maybe it is. But then the opposition have a dilemma. They can't criticize the loan without looking like they're hoping that things get worse. Just yet another reminder of how polarized we are. Where else in the world does a private company get money to stay open and create jobs, and people still get up all in their feelings? 2016, oh what a year that was. The year when Pastor Ivan accidentally created a movement, this flag, with a Zimbabwean flag and a cell phone. When thousands of people came together for Pastor E outside of court. Then you had Tajamuka. We remember those guys. We remember seeing Tajamuka addressing the bank queues. They were telling people to stand up and demand their money. And don't forget Stan Jorwadza and his crew. They invaded the Rainbow Towers to fish out VP Mpoko from his suite.
if the Zimbabwe Republic Police interferes with our civic rights, we will declare this hotel shut from now on until Mpekezela Mpoko leaves this hotel.
It was hectic. We got to meet Fadzai Mahere that year too. She was at the forefront of the war against bond notes.
Now, last week when the President addressed the Central Committee, he indicated that everyone who is opposed to bond notes is either political or ignorant. Now, I'm neither.
What a time to be alive that year was. So what happened? Well, November 2017 happened. With Mugabe in power, it was black or white. Now with Mugabe out the picture, there's a lot of grey in between. Where are these activists now? Well, Tajamuka is nowhere to be seen. The leader Promise Mkwananzi was involved in some controversy about donor funds recently. Haven't heard much from him since. Jorwadza right now is lashing out at the opposition. He says they are hypocrites. They're only criticizing ED because he left them out of his cabinet. After flirting with the idea of running for president, Pastor E is running for councillor in Ward 17 in Mount Pleasant as an independent. By the way, where is Povo? These guys launched with lots of social media hype, great branding, then they went quiet. Strange. Speaking of Mount Pleasant, this Fadzai Mahere, her online activism game was strong. So strong that the RBZ was forced to meet with her and other activists who were fighting against bond notes. She was a strong voice online. Then she decided to take it to the ground. In June 2017, she announced that she was running for MP for Mount Pleasant. Now, a lot of activists have discovered that it's not easy to move from social media activism to the ground. Fadzi knows this. One of her friends, Boniface Mwangi, ran a solid campaign online to become an NP in last year's Kenya election. But he still lost. Will it be different for Fadzai? Well, it's not impossible, but it's not going to be easy. In 2013, ZANU-PF candidate Jason Pasade won with 10,333 votes there. He beat the MDCT candidate Jamison Timber, who got 6,895 votes. Here's why Mount Pleasant will be tough for the opposition. The constituency is largely middle class, but it includes the army barracks, the main police depot, and Harare Central prisons. In 2013, Mount Pleasant Heights was moved to Mazoe South constituency. Instead, the nearby Kadugu farm, which has many settlers, was shifted into Mount Pleasant. That changed the whole demographic, but that's not her biggest challenge. The biggest one is that Zimbabweans vote along party lines. We've spoken about this before on the show. It's more about the party than the candidate. We're still living by Simon Muzenda's words. If there's a donkey on the ballot, if that donkey is ZANU-PF, you vote for the donkey. It goes the same for the MDC as well. Voters are loyal to their parties. Remember, Fadzai is not part of the MDC alliance. She's an independent. Her application to join the alliance was turned down. So she's up against both Pasade and Timber. That's really tough for her. Can she get the voters to set aside their party affiliation and vote for an independent? Well, she's been working hard to break that culture. She's done everything. She's done small business training for women. She's had doctors and lawyers clinics. She's done cleanup campaigns. She's even done a soccer tournament, and she was arrested for that in October last year. There are 22,000 registered voters in Mount Pleasant today. The biggest voting bloc is the 30 to 34 age group. To have a chance, she's going to have to make sure all of her supporters come out to vote. Fadzi has been on the ground for a year now. She's had a good head start. She's run an innovative campaign. She's raised funds online and told us how it was used. Her communication has been on point. Her branding is smart, it's clean. It's the kind of campaign you hope to see from some of our bigger parties. Whatever happens in this election, Fadzai Mahere has changed the game. Hey guys, thanks for watching POV. Subscribe to get more updates on Zimbabwean politics and what's happening in current affairs in the region. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.